This video is for section 5-9, rational equations. An equation in which a variable is in the denominator is called a rational equation. To solve this kind of equation, multiply each member by the least common denominator of the terms. Because there are variables in the denominator, there will be restricted values. And the solution process may result in an answer that is one of those restricted values. Therefore, you have to check potential roots using substitution. All year long, you've been encouraged to check your answers to any equation, but this time it's absolutely critical because one of the answers you get might not actually work. Let's try an example of this. Solve this equation. Notice the equation has fractions, like we had in recent sections, but in these fractions there are variables in the denominator. We hadn't had that yet. The process is to multiply every term by the LCD. To help identify the LCD, we should factor any polynomials in the denominator, like the x squared minus 4. So let's rewrite this as 1 plus 12 over, and then factor that x squared minus 4 using the double parentheses. X plus 2 times x minus 2. The fraction on the right side stays the same. By doing that, it helps us to identify the LCD. It will have two factors in it, x plus 2 and x minus 2. The technique is to multiply all terms of the equation by that least common denominator. Starting with the 1, when you multiply 1 to the x plus 2 times x minus 2, you get x plus 2 times x minus 2. Now this term here, when you multiply this one by the LCD, the x plus 2's will cancel and the x minus 2's will cancel. You'll get the 12. Now this term here, when you multiply it by the x plus 2 times x minus 2, do you notice that something's going to cancel? The x minus 2's will cancel. So what you have left over is 3 times x plus 2. Now solve this equation. X plus 2 times x minus 2 is the x squared minus 4. We have the plus 12, and then over here the distributive property, 3x plus 6. Let's subtract the 3x from both sides. We get x squared minus 3x. At the same time, let's combine the negative 4 and 12 to get 8, and that's equal to 6. Now subtract 6 from both sides. X squared minus 3x plus 2 is equal to 0. We've created a quadratic equation that is equal to 0. We solved these in an earlier section. The technique was to factor x minus 2 times x minus 1, and that's equal to 0. Then set each factor equal to 0. X minus 2 equals 0, or the x minus 1 is equal to 0, and solve. X could equal 2, or x could equal 1. But remember, for this section, because there are variables in the denominator, there are restricted values in the domain. Back in this step, we can identify that x cannot equal negative 2 or positive 2. One of the answers we got through the solution process is restricted. You need to cross out that answer, and the one that remains is the solution to the equation. Let's try another example of this. Here's an equation. We're asked to solve it, and it has variables in the denominator. The first step is to factor this one right here. That allows us to rewrite the problem. 2 over a plus 1 plus the 1 minus a over a equals 1 over a times a plus 1. Now we can identify that the least common denominator will have a factor of a and an a plus 1. Either now or later, you have to identify the restricted values. A cannot be 0 because of that denominator right there. And a cannot be -1 because of this denominator here. When we get done solving, if one of our answers is 0 or -1, we need to cross that answer away. Multiply every term by the LCD. When you multiply the first term by a times a plus 1, what happens with the a plus 1s? They cancel, so you really get 2 times a. When you multiply this by the LCD, what's going to cancel? It'll be the a. So what you really have is the 1 minus a times the a plus 1. In this last term, when you multiply it by the LCD, the a cancels and the a plus 1 cancels, leaving a 1. Now solve. This can be multiplied together. 1 times a is a. 1 times 1 is 1. Negative a times a is negative a squared, and negative a times 1 is negative a. Next step, combine like terms. And let's rearrange it and get the quadratic term first. So I'm going to write the negative a squared first, and then combine a terms. 2a plus a is 3a, and later minus a takes us back to a 2a. And we have the plus 1, and over here a 1. Next step, divide all terms by -1. To change the leading coefficient into a positive number, we get a squared minus 2a minus 1 equals -1. Next, add 1 to get the 0 on the right side. Next step, factor. A times a minus 2 is equal to 0. From the first factor, we get a equals 0, and from the second factor, we get a equals 2. Are any of these restricted answers? Cross it out. So the number that actually solves the equation is a equals 2. Let's summarize the lesson. We discussed how to solve equations that have variables in the denominator. The technique is to find the LCD, multiply everything by that LCD to cancel away the denominators. That creates an equation that has no denominators in it. Then solve that equation using the techniques you've learned this year.